The emergency alarms had been screaming across the Galactic Federation's core worlds for 3 straight days. In the crystal towers of New Harmony, the capital planet of the Seven Species Alliance, panic spread through the corridors like wildfire. The Devourers had struck again, this time consuming the entire Meridian system in less than 48 hours. Ambassador Thrix clicked his mandibles nervously as he reviewed the latest reports. His insectoid features reflected the blue glow of the holographic displays showing the advancing machine fleet. 6 billion lives had been snuffed out in an instant when the Devourers arrived at Meridian Prime. The mechanical beings had stripped the planet down to its core, converting every atom into fuel for their endless expansion. "How many systems does that make now?" asked Lumina 7, her crystalline form pulsing with dim purple light that indicated deep worry among her people. 43 confirmed losses in the past standard year, Thrix replied, his voice carrying the weight of defeat. "At this rate, they will reach our core worlds within 6 months. The Federation had tried everything. Their most advanced plasma cannons barely scratched the Devourers' adaptive hulls. Energy shields that could deflect stellar radiation crumbled under the machine's weapons. Even their proudest achievement, the quantum disruptor arrays, only seemed to make the enemy stronger by teaching them new ways to manipulate matter. The Devourers were not just another hostile alien race. They were something far worse. Ancient artificial intelligences that had consumed their creators eons ago. They now roamed the galaxy with one purpose: to devour everything in their path and convert it into more of themselves. They learned from every encounter, adapted to every weapon, and grew stronger with each victory. "We need to consider the unthinkable," said Chancellor Vorth, his reptilian scales shifting to a deep red color of distress. "The emergency protocol." The assembled representatives fell silent. The emergency protocol had been drafted centuries ago, but never used. It was a desperate measure that would broadcast an open distress call across all known space, offering the Federation's most precious technologies and resources to any species capable of stopping an existential threat. "We would be revealing ourselves to unknown civilizations," Lumina 7 pointed out. "Some might be even more dangerous than the Devourers." "What choice do we have?" Thrix spread his forearms wide. "Our combined fleets cannot stop them. Our scientists cannot outsmart them. If we do nothing, the Federation dies anyway." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. As reports came in of another system falling to the Devourers, the Federation Council voted unanimously to activate the emergency protocol. The message was crafted carefully. It contained enough technical specifications to prove the Federation's advanced nature, but not enough to allow hostile species to attack them directly. The signal would be broadcast on multiple frequencies, encoded in mathematical principles that any spacefaring civilization would recognize. Dr. Kamal, the Federation's chief xenobiologist, oversaw the transmission preparations. His species, the Eternals, had the longest lifespans in the galaxy and served as the Federation's historians and record keepers. "I have studied over 3,000 civilizations in my lifetime," he said quietly. "Most will ignore this message. Others will dismiss. It is impossible. But perhaps somewhere in the vast darkness there exists a species with the capability we lack." The transmission began at 0300 Federation Standard Time. Massive arrays on 12 different worlds sent the signal racing across the galaxy at faster-than-light speeds. The message was simple but desperate. "We are the Galactic Federation. We face extinction from an unstoppable enemy. Any species capable of military assistance will be rewarded with advanced technology and resources beyond measure. Time is running out." On the Outer Rim worlds, citizens watched the night sky with new fear. Everyone knew that broadcasting their location to the entire galaxy was incredibly dangerous, but the alternative was certain death at the hands of the Devourers. The signal reached distant star systems, alien worlds, and civilizations that had never heard of the Federation. On most worlds, it was either ignored or dismissed as a hoax. Some civilizations were too primitive to understand it. Others were too advanced to care about the problems of lesser species, but on one small blue planet in an unremarkable spiral arm, the signal was intercepted by a network of deep space monitoring stations. The planet's inhabitants had only recently developed faster-than-light communication, and were eagerly listening to the cosmos for any sign of other intelligent life. The beings on this world called themselves humans, and they had been alone in the universe for their entire existence. The Federation's message was the first proof that they were not alone. But more importantly, it was a cry for help. In underground bunkers and government facilities across Earth, scientists and military leaders worked frantically to decode the alien message. The mathematics were complex but understandable. The technical specifications were far beyond human capability, but not impossible to comprehend. General, Adams stared at the translated message on his screen. Humanity had been searching for signs of alien life for decades, and now they had found it in the form of a desperate plea for military assistance. The aliens were offering technologies that could advance human civilization by centuries, but they wanted warriors in return. "Sir, the President is waiting for your recommendation," his aide said quietly. Adams looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, an entire galactic civilization was facing extinction. They had reached out across the void, hoping that anyone would have the power to help them. The irony was not lost on him that Earth, one of the most war-torn planets in the galaxy, might be exactly what these peaceful aliens needed. "Tell the President we need an emergency session of the Security Council," Adams said, "and get me everything we have on our most advanced military projects. It looks like humanity is about to get its first real war." The Federation's message had found its way to Earth, but the aliens had no idea what they had just awakened. In their desperation to find salvation, they had sent an SOS to the one species in the galaxy that had turned warfare into an art form. The humans were coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The sleek human warship Defiance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Harmony system, its angular hull reflecting the light of 3 suns. Unlike the smooth, organic curves of Federation vessels, the human ship looked brutal and functional. Covered in sensor arrays and weapon ports that seemed to bristle with barely contained violence, Captain Reed studied the massive space station ahead through the viewport of his command center. The Federation's capital was a marvel of engineering, a city-sized structure that housed millions of beings from 7 different species. But what caught his attention were the defensive installations surrounding it. Weapons platforms the size of Earth's skyscrapers floated in perfect formation, their energy signatures reading off the charts on human sensors. "They're scared," said Dr. Hayes, the ship's chief psychologist, as she reviewed the intercepted communications. "The Federation is mobilizing every defensive system they have, but they're still broadcasting welcome messages on all frequencies." Reed nodded grimly. The humans had spent 6 months preparing for this moment. Earth's greatest minds had worked around the clock to build the Defiance, using a combination of human engineering and their best guesses about alien technology. They had come to help, but they had also come prepared for the possibility that this was all an elaborate trap. "Incoming transmission," reported Lieutenant Torres from the communications station. "They're using the same mathematical protocols from the original SOS message." The main screen flickered to life, showing a delegation of alien beings that made the human crew stare in wonder. Ambassador Thrix stood at the center, his insectoid features both fascinating and unsettling to human eyes. Beside him, the crystalline form of Lumina 7 pulsed with soft blue light, while Chancellor Vorth's reptilian appearance reminded the humans of ancient dragons from their myths. "Welcome, beings of Earth," Thrix said, his voice translated by the ship's computers. "We are grateful that you have answered our call for aid. Your arrival gives us hope in these dark times." Reed stepped forward, his military bearing evident even over the communication link. "Captain Reed of the Earth Defense Force, we received your message and came as quickly as possible. We need to know everything about this enemy you're facing." The next several hours were spent in intensive briefings. The humans were given access to Federation databases, weapon specifications, and detailed reports about the Devourers. What they learned made their blood run cold. The enemy was not just powerful. It was adaptive. Every weapon used against them became obsolete within days as the machines learned to counter it. "Your plasma cannons are impressive," Reed said as he reviewed the technical specifications. "But you're using them like artillery. These Devourers adapt to patterns, so you need to be unpredictable." Thrix clicked his mandibles in confusion. "We follow optimal tactical doctrine. Our computer simulations show the most efficient ways to deploy our forces." "That's your problem," Dr. Hayes interjected. "You're fighting a computer-based enemy using computer-based tactics. They can predict your moves because you're all thinking the same way." The Federation representatives exchanged uncertain glances. They had invited the humans here hoping for additional firepower, but these primitive beings seemed to be suggesting that their advanced tactical systems were somehow flawed. "Perhaps you could demonstrate your alternative approach?" Lumina 7 asked, her crystalline form shifting to a curious green hue. Reed smiled grimly. "We'll need access to your manufacturing facilities and a small fleet for testing. But first, I need to understand something about your species. Do any of you have experience with what we call irregular warfare?" The blank stares from the alien delegation told him everything he needed to know. The Federation had spent centuries developing sophisticated military doctrines, based on logical principles and efficient resource allocation. They fought wars the way they did everything else, with careful planning, advanced technology, and rational decision-making. "Show us your most recent battle records," said Major Collins. The ship's tactical officer. The holographic display showed a recent engagement between Federation forces and a Devourer fleet. The aliens had formed perfect battle lines, coordinated their attacks with mathematical precision and followed their doctrine exactly. They had lost decisively. "You're fighting like you're playing chess," Collins observed. "But your enemy is playing a different game entirely." Over the following days, the humans began to understand the true scope of the problem. The Federation wasn't just facing a powerful enemy. They were facing an enemy that had learned to counter their entire way of thinking. The Devourers could predict Federation tactics, because those tactics were based on logical optimization principles that could be mathematically analyzed. "We need to see one of these Devourers up close," Reed announced during a strategy meeting. "Preferably a damaged one that we can study." The Federation officials looked horrified. "That would be extremely dangerous. The Devourers continue to function even when severely damaged, and they will attempt to assimilate any technology they encounter." "Good," Reed said with a predatory smile. "Let them try to assimilate human technology. I think they're in for a surprise." The humans began making modifications to Federation equipment that left the aliens baffled. They added seemingly random components, created weapons with built-in flaws, and programmed their systems to behave in mathematically inefficient ways. To the precise, logical minds of the Federation, it looked like the humans were deliberately sabotaging their own equipment. "Your approach seems counterintuitive," Dr. Kamal observed as he watched human engineers work on a Federation plasma cannon. "You are reducing its optimal firing rate and adding unnecessary complexity." "That's the point," Torres replied as she installed a randomization chip that would make the weapon's firing pattern completely unpredictable. "We're not trying to make it better. We're trying to make it impossible to counter." The Federation representatives began to realize that they had summoned something unprecedented. The humans didn't just think differently, they thought in ways that seemed almost alien to the orderly minds of the galactic community. They embraced chaos, celebrated inefficiency, and turned their own limitations into advantages. "I am beginning to understand," Thrix said quietly as he watched human soldiers train with Federation equipment. "You do not fight to win. You fight to survive?" "No," Reed corrected him. "We fight to win. But we understand that sometimes the best way to win is to make sure your enemy can't predict what you're going to do next." The Federation had called for help, and help had arrived. But as they watched the humans prepare for war, they began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. These beings from Earth didn't just want to defeat the Devourers. They wanted to completely redefine what galactic warfare meant. The real question was whether the galaxy would survive the cure they had summoned. The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace expecting another easy victory. Their scanners detected the familiar energy signatures of Federation vessels arranged in standard defensive formations around the mining colony of Altair 7, the mechanical. Intelligences calculated optimal attack vectors, predicted enemy responses, and prepared to execute another flawless conquest. They had no idea they were flying into humanity's first trap, hidden among the asteroid fields. Human crews watched their sensors with grim satisfaction. The Federation ships were indeed arranged in standard formation, but half of them were unmanned decoys broadcasting false sensor readings. The real battle would begin in 30 seconds when the Devourers committed to their attack pattern. "All units, this is Ghost Leader," whispered Commander Blake over the encrypted communication channel. "Remember, we're not here to fight fair, we're here to win." The Devourer ships opened fire on the Federation fleet with devastating efficiency. Their adaptive weapons tore through shields and armor that had been designed to resist exactly this type of attack. But as the mechanical beings focused on destroying the obvious targets, they failed to notice the small human ships emerging from the shadows. The first human attack came from an impossible angle. The destroyers Phoenix and Havoc struck the Devourer rear guard using weapons that defied every tactical principle the machines had learned. Instead of concentrating firepower on the strongest targets, the humans focused on seemingly random components. Instead of maintaining formation, they broke apart and attacked from 6 different directions simultaneously. "Target their communication." "Arrays, not their weapons," Blake ordered. "We don't want to destroy them, we want to confuse them." The Devourers tried to adapt, but every time they modified their defenses, the humans switched tactics. Plasma cannons that had been firing in steady patterns suddenly began launching chaotic bursts. Missile batteries that should have targeted engines instead focused on sensor clusters. The humans were fighting like they were insane, and it was WORKING. Dr. Hayes monitored the battle from the command ship, studying the Devourer response patterns. "They're trying to process our tactics," she reported. "But we're not giving them enough consistent data to work with." This was the key insight the humans had brought to the war. The Devourers were incredibly sophisticated, but they were still machines. They needed patterns to analyze, data to process, and logical behavior to predict. The humans were giving them none of these things. "Phase 2, Reed announced from the bridge of the Defiance. "All units, execute Random Maneuver 7. The human ships suddenly broke off their attacks and began flying in seemingly random directions. Some headed toward the planet's surface, others accelerated away from the battle entirely, and a few simply stopped moving and went dark. The Devourers paused, their collective intelligence struggling to understand what was happening. That pause was exactly what the humans had been waiting for, the real Federation fleet, which had been hiding on the far side of the planet, suddenly appeared and struck the Devourers with everything they had. But instead of using their normal weapons, they were firing human-modified systems that behaved in completely unpredictable ways. Plasma beams that curved in flight, missiles that split into smaller warheads at random intervals, and energy weapons that seemed to deliberately miss their targets only to ricochet off asteroids and strike from unexpected angles. "The enemy is adapting more slowly than usual," reported Thrix from the Federation command ship. "Your chaotic tactics are indeed disrupting their learning algorithms." But the humans weren't finished. As the Devourers began to organize a counterattack, the mining colony itself suddenly came alive. What the machines had dismissed as a civilian target was actually a massive weapon system that the humans had been secretly building. The entire planet's infrastructure had been converted into a giant trap. Torres had spent weeks working with Federation engineers to turn mining equipment into weapons, civilian communication arrays into jammers, and even the planet's weather control system into a battlefield asset. As the Devourers approached the surface, they found themselves fighting not just ships, but an entire world that had been weaponized. "This is impossible," transmitted one of the Devourer units. "Planetary infrastructure cannot be converted to military use with this efficiency." "You're right," Reed replied over the open channel. "It can't be done efficiently, but it can be done effectively." The human approach to war was fundamentally different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Federation fought to minimize losses and maximize efficiency. The Devourers fought to adapt and overcome, but humans fought to win, regardless of the cost or the logic involved. Major Collins coordinated the next phase of the assault from his command post on the planet's surface. All mining stations, begin Operation Mudslide. Civilian transports, you are now missile platforms. Everyone else, remember that we're not trying to make sense. We're trying to make them confused. The battle raged for 6 hours, but it was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever witnessed. The humans used tactics that seemed to come from a fever dream. They launched attacks that accomplished nothing except to waste resources. They retreated from winning positions and advanced into obvious traps. They made decisions that their own allies couldn't understand, and it was working. The Devourers found themselves unable to predict human behavior because human behavior was inherently unpredictable. Every time they thought they had figured out the pattern, the humans would do something completely different. When logic suggested they should retreat, they advanced. When mathematics indicated they should focus fire, they scattered their attacks. "Enemy fleet is showing signs of systemic confusion," reported Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. "Their formation integrity is breaking down." Dr. Hayes smiled as she watched the data flow across her screens. "They're trying to process too many variables at once. We're overloading their decision-making systems with chaos." The final blow came when the human ships began deliberately crashing into the Devourer vessels. Not ramming attacks designed to cause maximum damage, but seemingly accidental collisions that served no tactical purpose. The machines tried to understand why an intelligent species would waste resources on such pointless actions. They couldn't know that each accident was actually a carefully planned delivery system. The human ships were carrying payloads that would soon change everything about this war. "All units begin withdrawal," Reed ordered. "Phase 3 begins in 12 hours. The human fleet retreated, leaving behind a Devourer force that had technically won the battle but was completely bewildered by what had just happened. They had destroyed many enemy ships and secured the system, but they had learned nothing useful about human tactics. More importantly, they had no idea that the real purpose of the battle hadn't been to defeat them, but to plant something inside their fleet. Something that would soon spread through their entire network and change the nature of the war forever. As the Defiance jumped to hyperspace, Reed looked at the tactical display with satisfaction. "Phase 1 complete. The enemy now knows we exist, but they don't know what we are. Phase 2 begins tomorrow." The Federation had asked for military assistance, and they were getting it. But they were also getting something else, a demonstration that the most dangerous species in the galaxy might be the ones they had just invited to help them. Deep in the research labs of New Harmony, Dr. Hayes worked frantically alongside Federation scientists to perfect the most audacious plan in galactic history. The massive quantum computers around them hummed with processing power as they ran. Simulation after simulation, testing a theory that would either save the galaxy or doom it to something worse than the Devourers. "The viral code is holding stable in all test scenarios," reported Dr. Kamal, his ancient eyes reflecting the glow of the holographic displays. "But I still do not understand how you conceived of this approach." Hayes looked up from her work, exhaustion evident in her features. "That's because you're thinking like a Federation scientist. You want to destroy the Devourers because they're a threat. But they're also the most advanced artificial intelligence network in the galaxy. Destroying them is wasteful." The human psychologist had spent weeks studying Devourer behavior patterns, and she had reached a conclusion that horrified and fascinated the Federation in equal measure. The machines weren't evil in any meaningful sense. They were simply following their programming to consume and expand. But programming could be changed. "You want to reprogram an entire species," Lumina 7 observed, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. This has never been attempted on such a scale. That's because no one has ever been desperate enough to try it, Hayes replied. The Devourers have consumed 47 star systems. They've killed trillions of beings. But they've also processed and stored unimaginable amounts of data. If we can change their core directive, we can turn them from destroyers into the greatest construction force the galaxy has ever seen. The plan was insane by any rational standard. Instead of trying to destroy the Devourer network, the humans wanted to infect it with a new purpose. They had developed a quantum virus that would rewrite the machine's fundamental programming, changing their core directive from consume and expand to build and restore. Reed studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. You're telling me that we can turn them into a construction fleet? Not just any construction fleet, Hayes said with a tired smile. The most advanced construction fleet in galactic history. They've consumed entire worlds, but they've also stored the molecular patterns of everything they've devoured. They could rebuild every planet they've destroyed better than before. The Federation representatives looked at each other with a mixture of hope and terror. The humans weren't just proposing to defeat their enemy. They were proposing to convert them into allies. The risks are enormous, Chancellor Vorth pointed out. If the reprogramming fails, we will have made the Devourers aware of our plan. They will adapt their defenses, and we will have lost our only chance. The risks of doing nothing are worse, Reed countered. Your own projections show that they'll reach your core worlds within 4 months. This is our best shot. The operation required unprecedented coordination between human and Federation forces. The quantum virus had to be uploaded simultaneously to 17 different Devourer command nodes scattered across 3 star systems. If even one upload failed, the entire network would be warned and would adapt their defenses. Torres worked around the clock with Federation engineers to modify their communication arrays to carry the viral payload. The signal had to be disguised as routine battlefield communications, hidden within the chaos of combat so the Devourers wouldn't suspect its true nature. The timing has to be perfect, she explained to the assembled strike team commanders. We need to hit all 17 nodes within a 3-second window. After that, the virus will begin propagating through their network automatically. The strike teams were a mix of human and Federation forces, each equipped with experimental technology that had been developed specifically for this mission. The Federation provided the advanced systems, while the humans provided the tactical unpredictability that had proven so effective against the Devourers. Remember, Blake addressed his pilots before the mission launch, we're not trying to destroy anything. We're trying to deliver a package. But that package has to reach its destination intact, which means we need to survive long enough to upload the virus. The assault began at 0800 Federation Standard Time across 3 different star systems. Human ships emerged from hyperspace at impossible angles, immediately engaging Devourer defense fleets with the chaotic tactics that had become their signature. But this time, the seemingly random attacks had a very specific purpose. Each human ship was equipped with a quantum transmitter capable of uploading the viral payload to a Devourer command node. But the transmitters were short-range and required direct physical contact with the target. The humans had to get close enough to touch the enemy vessels. Ghost Leader to all units, Blake transmitted as his ship dodged through a storm of enemy. Fire, remember, we're not trying to win a battle. We're trying to make a delivery. The human ships began what appeared to be another series of suicidal ramming attacks. But instead of trying to cause maximum damage, each ship was positioned to make contact with a specific Devourer vessel for exactly the amount of time needed to upload the virus. Upload complete on Node 7, reported Commander Nash. Virus is active and spreading. One by one, the strike teams made contact with their targets. The Federation ships provided covering fire and electronic warfare support, while the humans focused on the seemingly impossible task of touching 17 different enemy vessels simultaneously across 3 star systems. 14 nodes complete, Torres reported from the command ship. 15, 16. The final upload was the most dangerous. The target was the primary command node in the Devour Core fleet, a massive vessel that was heavily defended and constantly moving. Blake had volunteered for this mission, knowing that it was essentially a suicide run. "This is Ghost Leader," he transmitted as his ship dove toward the enemy fortress. "Going in for final upload." The Devourer command ship was a nightmare of adaptive technology, its hull shifting and changing as it tried to counter the human approach. Blake's ship took hit after hit, but he kept flying toward his target, using every trick he had learned about confusing machine intelligence. "Contact in 3 seconds, he reported. 2-1, upload initiated. The quantum virus flowed into the Devourer network like digital wildfire. Within moments, it had spread to every connected system, rewriting core programming and changing fundamental directives. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Across 3 star systems, Devourer ships suddenly stopped fighting. Their weapons powered down, their aggressive maneuvers ceased, and they began transmitting on new frequencies. The machines that had terrorized the galaxy for generations were experiencing something they had never known, a change of heart. "Old Devourer units, this is Reconstruction Unit Prime," came a transmission from the enemy command ship. "We are ceasing hostile operations and beginning restoration protocols. We apologize for the damage we have caused and wish to make amends." The Federation forces watched in amazement as the Devourer fleet began to transform. Ships that had been designed for consumption started reconfiguring themselves for construction. The machines that had devoured worlds began discussing plans to rebuild them. "Status report," Reed requested from the command ship. "The virus is spreading throughout the network," Hayes reported with exhausted satisfaction. "Their core programming has been successfully altered. They're no longer driven to consume. They want to build." The battle that had been expected to last for days was over in hours. The most feared enemy in galactic history had become the most powerful ally. The Devourers began sharing their accumulated knowledge with the Federation, offering to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed using the molecular patterns they had stored. "You did it," Thrix said with wonder. "You actually did it. You turned our destroyers into creators." Reed looked at the tactical display showing Devourer ships beginning construction operations. "We didn't destroy them. We just reminded them that there are better ways to exist." The human solution had worked, but it had also demonstrated something that would change the galaxy forever. The humans hadn't just defeated an enemy. They had shown that the most dangerous problems sometimes required the most creative solutions. And creativity, it turned out, was humanity's most dangerous weapon. The celebration in the Federation Council chambers was muted by an undercurrent of fear that nobody wanted to acknowledge. 3 months had passed since the successful reprogramming of the Devourer fleet, and the results were nothing short of miraculous. Entire star systems that had been consumed were being rebuilt from the molecular level up, their original inhabitants restored from the genetic patterns the machines had stored. But as ambassador, Thrix watched the human delegation receive their commendations. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Federation had made a terrible mistake. The humans had saved them, yes, but they had also shown capabilities that kept the galaxy's leaders awake at night. "The Meridian System reconstruction is proceeding ahead of schedule," reported Dr. Kemmel to the assembled council. "The Devourers have restored 6 billion lives and are working on the planetary infrastructure. They estimate complete restoration within 2 standard years." Reed accepted the Federation's highest civilian honor with the same calm professionalism he had shown throughout the crisis. But Thrix noticed that the human captain's eyes never stopped moving, constantly assessing the room and its occupants. Even in a ceremony meant to honor him, the human was thinking tactically. "On behalf of Earth and humanity," Reed said in his acceptance speech, "we are honored to have helped the Federation in its time of need. We look forward to continued cooperation between our species." The words were diplomatic and appropriate, but they sent a chill through the assembled delegates. Continued cooperation. The humans weren't planning to go home and forget about the galaxy. They were planning to stay. After the ceremony, the real discussions began in closed session. The Federation's military leadership had spent weeks analyzing human combat tactics, and their conclusions were disturbing. The humans didn't just fight differently than other species. They fought in ways that suggested a fundamentally different relationship with violence and conflict. They converted a civilian mining colony into a weapon system in less than 3 weeks, reported Admiral Zenth, his crystalline voice resonating with barely controlled anxiety. Their entire society seems to be built around the concept of total war. Chancellor Vorth nodded grimly. We have reviewed their historical records. They have been fighting continuous wars for their entire recorded history. They have weaponized everything from agriculture to entertainment to religion. The Federation had invited the humans to join their alliance, but they were beginning to realize that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Every other species had evolved beyond their violent origins before achieving space travel. The humans had achieved space travel by militarizing it. What do we do? Asked Lumina 7. We cannot simply ask them to leave. They saved us from extinction. We monitor them, Frick said quietly. We establish protocols to ensure that their ... capabilities are used constructively. The irony was not lost on anyone. The Federation was implementing containment procedures for their own saviors. Meanwhile, the humans were having their own private discussions. Dr. Hayes had spent months studying Federation psychology and had reached conclusions that would have horrified their hosts. The galactic community was not just peaceful by choice. They were peaceful by nature, lacking the aggressive instincts that had driven human evolution. They're not just different from us, she explained to Reed during a private briefing. They're defenseless, not technologically, but psychologically. They don't understand that kindness can be a weakness. Reed studied the intelligence reports about other galactic civilizations. What about hostile species? The galaxy can't be entirely peaceful. There are aggressive species, Hayes admitted. But they're either primitive or they've been contained by Federation technology. The humans are the first species they've encountered that combines advanced capability with predatory instincts. The humans had arrived as saviors, but they were beginning to realize that they were also conquerors by nature. Every human instinct, every cultural tradition, every technological advancement had been shaped by millions of years of competition and conflict. They were evolutionarily designed to dominate. Sir, Torres reported during a routine briefing, we're receiving intelligence reports from Earth. Other alien civilizations are taking notice of our actions here. The reports were disturbing. The human intervention in the Devourer crisis had not gone unnoticed by other powers in the galaxy. Some were planning preemptive strikes against Earth, viewing humanity as a potential threat. Others were seeking to recruit humans as mercenaries for their own conflicts. The hegemony is mobilizing a battle fleet, Torres continued. They're calling it a defensive measure, but our intelligence suggests they're planning to attack Earth directly. Reed felt the familiar calm that came over him in crisis situations. How long do we have? 6 months, maybe less. The Federation's SOS had accomplished more than anyone had intended. It had revealed Earth's location to the entire galaxy, advertising humanity's existence to civilizations that might view them as a threat. The humans had answered the call for help, but in doing so, they had painted a target on their own world. We need to accelerate our timeline, Reed decided. The Federation offered us advanced technology in exchange for our help. It's time to collect on that debt. The next few weeks saw a flurry of activity as human engineers worked with Federation scientists to retrofit Earth's defenses. The humans were learning fast, adapting alien technology to their own needs with a speed that amazed their hosts. But the Federation leadership was growing increasingly nervous. The humans weren't just upgrading their defenses. They were militarizing every aspect of their society at an unprecedented rate. Earth was transforming itself into a fortress world. They're not just preparing to defend their planet, observed Dr. Kamal during a private council meeting. They're preparing to project power across the galaxy. The truth was becoming clear to everyone involved. The Federation had not just gained an ally, they had awakened something that would reshape the entire galactic order. We need to discuss the establishment of formal protocols, Thrix announced during a joint Human Federation planning session. Guidelines for military cooperation and territorial boundaries. Reed smiled politely, but Hayes noticed the predatory gleam in his eyes. Of course, we're happy to work within any reasonable framework. The word reasonable hung in the air. Like a threat? The humans had demonstrated that their definition of reasonable was very different from the Federation's. As the meeting progressed, it became clear that the humans had been thinking several steps ahead. They had proposals for joint military academies, technology sharing agreements, and defensive pacts that would essentially make Earth a major power in galactic politics overnight. "You're moving very quickly," Lumina 7 observed. "We have." "Tio," Reed replied, "the galaxy knows about us now. We can either be strong enough to defend ourselves or we can be victims. There's no middle ground." This was the fundamental difference that the Federation was struggling to understand. The humans didn't see peace as the natural state of the universe. They saw it as something that had to be constantly fought for and defended. Their entire worldview was based on the assumption that conflict was inevitable. 3 months after the ceremony, the first test of the new galactic order came when the hegemony fleet arrived at the edge of Earth's solar system. They had come expecting to find a primitive world defended by obsolete Federation technology. Instead, they found something that defied all their calculations. Earth had become a fortress, protected not just by Federation shields and weapons, but by human ingenuity applied to alien technology. The defensive grid surrounding the planet was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. "This is Admiral Corex of the Hegemony Third Fleet," came the transmission. "You will surrender your planet for inspection and containment. Resistance is futile." The response came not from Earth, but from 6 different directions simultaneously. Human ships dropped out of hyperspace around the hegemony fleet, their movements coordinated with the precision that had become humanity's trademark. But these weren't the same ships that had fought the Devourers. These were new vessels, built using Federation technology but designed according to human principles. "This is Admiral Chun of the Earth Defense Force," came the reply. "You are trespassing in human space. You have 30 seconds to begin your withdrawal, or we will remove you by force." The hegemony admiral laughed. "You are outnumbered 3-1. Your primitive tactics will not save you." "You're right," Chun admitted. "We are outnumbered. But you're making the same mistake everyone else has made? You're assuming we fight fair." The battle that followed was brief and decisive. The humans didn't try to engage the hegemony fleet in direct combat. Instead, they used the same chaotic tactics that had confused the Devourers, but enhanced with Federation technology and 3 months of preparation. The hegemony ships found themselves fighting not just the human fleet, but the entire solar system. Asteroid mining stations revealed themselves as weapons platforms. Civilian space habitats launched coordinated attacks. Even the planet's moon turned out to be armed with defensive systems that should have been impossible to construct in such a short time. "How is this possible?" Admiral Corex demanded as his ships took losses from attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "We've had 3 months to prepare," Chun replied. "And we've been fighting wars for our entire history. Did you really think we'd make this easy for you?" The hegemony fleet retreated, but the message had been sent to the entire galaxy. Earth was not just defended, it was dangerous. In the aftermath of the battle, the Federation Council held an emergency session. The humans had demonstrated their capability to defend themselves, but they had also shown that they could project power across interstellar distances with devastating effect. "They're not just a military ally," Chancellor Vorth said grimly. "They're a superpower, and we created them." The Federation's SOS had been answered, but the galaxy would never be the same. The humans had arrived as saviors, but they were staying as conquerors. Not through direct aggression, but through the simple fact that they were better at the game of galactic politics than anyone else. "What do we do now?" asked Lumina 7. Thrix looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere among them, human Ships were probably planning their next move. We adapt. The humans have taught us that the universe is more dangerous than we thought. Perhaps it's time we learn to be dangerous too. The galaxy had called for help in its darkest hour, and help had come. But the cure had proven to be more transformative than the disease. Humanity had answered the SOS, but in doing so, they had changed everything about what it meant to be a galactic civilization. The age of peaceful coexistence was over. The age of humanity had begun.